Welcome to the PerfWeb podcast, hosted by Joe Basha.
Hey, okay, all right. Let the studio audience, the vast studio audience, need to calm down. Yeah, there you go. All right, stop it. Thank you so much. It's like we're doing a talk show. Okay,
an audience of one.
We got an audience. There's 10
really?
on YouTube.
Awesome.
So
Welcome, everybody.
How many on
this is fantastic.
How many on FaceSpace and X? Yeah, just keep going. You'll let me know. Okay. All right. Sounds good. Okay. Well, I'm here with my good friend and colleague, Thomas DiSalvo. You've seen him on the program a number of times, and he's going to give us some really interesting information today on EMR design. He actually, he may tell you in his talk, but I can tell you this. He should have received an award, but he left his previous position and came to work over for us. And at the time that he was going to get an award, but because he had left, they gave the award to somebody else. But he did all the work in putting a major university institution's EMR program together, which I'm assuming you're going to be talking about that.
Yes.
Okay, good. So let's get right into our standard opening remarks. If we could, please. You want to reach out to us, contact at perfusioneducation.com. You see it down there at the bottom of the screen. You want to call in. You want to be live on the air. You want to ask Thomas a question.
Ask Joe a question.
Yep, maybe. It's 832 832-239-5358. That's 832-239-5358. And the reason I actually say it is in case you're driving and you're only listening and you can't see the scroll bar. But for those of you who are not driving and can see the scroll bar, you see it down there below. That has all of our social media, where to register for our programs, our contact information, and the call-in phone number. So anything you want to discuss, anything you want to bring up, anything that you want to say, you want to be a faculty, you want to give a presentation. Is there a subject you really know, you're good at, you really know a lot about, maybe a great case that you did, something really interesting. Maybe it was just a horrible case, because those are always more fun, to listen to. Horror stories are the best. Don't hesitate, right? Send us some information. Happy to have you as a guest faculty and present your information, your paper, your research, your case, whatever it may be, okay? I want to talk about our app real quick. So if you go to the Apple Store, or you go to the Google's version of the Apple Store, whatever you call it, the Google Play, you can find the MediWeb Critical Care and Perfusion app. And this has really some great tools in it. It's very useful. Updates are free. It's cheap. It's $2.99. It doesn't even pay for anything for the cost of building the app. But if I could sell just 1 million of them, I would make money and I could retire. So I think we got about 999,000 more to go. We're going to get there eventually. Maybe 999,999. No, I think we've got a few. I don't know how many we have sold, but we have sold quite a few. And it really is a good app. I'm very proud of it. We've done a lot of good with it. I used it today for my case. Our podcast, you go to whatever your favorite podcast streaming platform is, type in PerfWeb, and you will find our podcast there. I also wanted to bring up, and David, I know I'm going to throw you a curveball. I hope you don't mind. You don't have to put it up if you can't, but we did I believe it was our 4th adult ECMO specialist course this past week. It went really well. I was very happy with it. But if you go to mediweb.us, I don't know if you can show that or not, David, if it's possible. Yeah, there it is right there. Thanks, man. Man, you're good. If you go to mediweb.us and click up at the top, the one in the middle, the call out is basically just straight to registration. But to find out all the information up at the top menu that you see there, click on Adult ECMO Specialist, and it'll bring it up. And I'm getting it approved for perfusionists this next round. We don't always do perfusion, but it is a two-part course. You have just the didactic portion, which is not yet approved, so I don't want to say anything. We've sent the application in, but the board is very funny about saying anything about the CEUs are pending. All I can say is I did submit the application, and I anticipate that it should be approved. And then we have, that's for 2 days. I think it's somewhere around 20 hours. And then 20 hours of, or 20 CEU, I guess, of simulation for 2 days. But that requires travel here to Houston. You can do the full course, which it requires, again, that travel to Houston. And the course is designed to meet ELSO standards for you being able to apply to take the ELSO Adult ECMO Specialist exam. Now, it's not endorsed by ELSO. ELSO doesn't accredit our program, but they do have a set of standards that we meet in order for our course to be accepted by them so that you can take the Adult ECMO certification exam if you meet the clinical hours. But you can also do just the didactic. You don't have to do both parts, so we split it up that way. You can't just do the simulation. You can either do the didactic only or the full program. But check it out if you would, mediweb.us. We're very proud of the program, put a lot of effort into this, and everyone that takes it is always very, very, very pleased with it. And is there anything else I'm supposed to say today? That's it? Okay. So with that said, I'm sure y'all are probably tired of hearing me and my voice already. But I do want to point out my hat, Make Education Great Again. This is a mega hat, not to be confused with a MAGA hat. It's a mega hat, Make Education Great Again. And I'm going to turn this lecture over to my good friend and colleague, Thomas DiSalvo.
Thank you, Joe.
Yes, sir.
That was a great introduction.
Thank you.
Yeah. My first topic today is EMR design. And I debated really hard on how I was going to do this because I could have done it with on the computers, but I decided to go ahead and just do it
You
on
mean like a PowerPoint
like
design?
a PowerPoint, yeah.
But you
I decided to do it on this way because I want to try to keep some anonymity from the program that we did do, but still give you a lot of information that you need. And I am actually very honored and proud that the program that my colleague and I built at my former institution was so well received. And I know we put a lot of work into it, and it was very flattering, the comments that we got from very high people throughout the hospital system and outside of the hospital system. So I'm very proud of that. And I hope that I can offer some good ideas for those of you that are going into this right now.
Right. But we're going to have to go into it, right? I mean, I'm hearing more and more. Look at the new Essence heart-lung machine. It has it built into it.
Right.
I don't think you'll be able to buy a heart-lung machine in the future from anywhere, not new anyway, that will not have EMR or some type of, there you go.
I already wrote the program for the, I already wrote our stuff for the Essence.
So I'll let you go. But
Right.
but this is something that is, you know, I don't know if it will be in my professional lifetime or not. I don't have that many years left, you know, a little under 3 years before I'm going to hang it up. But I'm not sure, but certainly anybody that's has another 15 or 20 years left in their career, they are definitely going to be using this.
Yeah, it's coming whether you like it or not. And that's one of the first things I want to say is that these EMR programs, they're not as user-friendly as they're supposed to be. And they're also not your friend because they are gathering information. And a lawyer is going to look at this information if there's a problem. And a lot of times you'll have like a pressure drop. And for us, it's just a normal, the pressure drop because we gave cardioplegia. And a lawyer will look at this and they'll say, well, why was your pressure down for 5 minutes or 8 minutes or whatever? And for us to rationalize why this happened, it doesn't say it as well as what Epic said. Because Epic said it loud and clear, your pressure was down for 8 minutes. And your flows may have been fine and everything else may have been fine. But they can pick on that one thing and get mad at you for that or pick on you for that. But we're going to get into the EMR design. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. You go ahead.
The very first thing that you want to talk about when you deal with these EMRs is people involved. And there's really 5 groups that are involved with it. The very first person and the most important person is the clinician that's going to be using it. Because it's not everybody else's fault if the program doesn't work the way you want it to work. Because it's ultimately up to you to give them the right information. So the second people, go ahead.
I'm sorry. No, it's anesthesia's fault.
It's always anesthesia's fault.
Yes, of course.
Yeah. The second group of people, they kind of go together. But it's going to be your biomed people because they're heavily involved with all the machines already. And they know what machines you have and where they're at. And as a perfusionist, at least as a perfusion manager, you should also know where your machines are and their serial numbers and where they're at. The next group of people is IT. IT is extremely important because all of these systems are running through almost like a Bluetooth system, a wireless system that's going throughout the entire hospital, and information is being dumped from machines to their web systems, and then brought down into the program, which we used Epic, yeah. Sometimes I get kind of paused there. We used Epic, and so that's kind of what's happening here. So IT and biomed are very, very heavily involved in setting these things up. Each machine is going to be attached to what's called a neuron. And the neuron is a slang term. We actually used capsule. So we called it a neuron, but the actual name of it, the machine's name, it's a capsule. What a neuron is, it's just like a part of your body that sends signals. So that's why its nickname, its slang term name is neuron. But we use the capsule. And it's confusing because sometimes we call it neuron, sometimes we call it capsule. And when we were first setting it up, I couldn't figure out. I was lost.
So basically, the neuron you used had a name of capsule.
Yes. That was the name of the machine.
Like my cloud is Apple Time Machine.
Kind of, yeah. So it's kind of like a nickname when we call it a neuron. It's not what it says on the side of the machine. The side of the machine says something different. And every machine that you have will have a capsule attached to it, except a few of them. And then that's kind of an important distinction there because when the neuron or our capsule was grabbing information, we told it what information to grab from that machine. And we told it where to go in Epic. So let's move on with the people. The fourth most important person is a person that's usually not a biomed person and usually not an IT person, but they are very smart. I should just write that in big letters. They go through extensive training on Epic, on how to write what we want and how to write it into Epic. And they are usually sort of clinicianish, so like they may be some former nurses or something like that, but they also have an extremely good background in computers. And I don't really know what to call these people, but I know that we worked extensively with them. And we let biomed and IT figure this part out. And then the last person is going to be your hospital administrators, because they pay for it. And so these are the people that are involved with setting up the program. Oops. Once you've set up your program and you start having meetings about what you want, if you haven't done it already, you should start doing this now. And what I recommend is first you take all of your hardware, all of it, and divide it into categories. So you're going to take all your pumps in one category, and you're going to take all of your heater coolers in another category, your balloon pumps, your tandem hearts, whatever machines you have that you use, all of them. And you're going to...
Blood gas analyzers?
Yes. Yes, you could do that.
Okay.
Yep.
Or lab, POC lab.
POC lab, yeah. Because you're going to be putting all of these things into Epic. So the first thing is you're going to take all these hardware and you're going to write them into a spreadsheet. And that spreadsheet is going to have first, it's going to have the serial number of the machine. And the second thing it's going to have is a biomedical number. Because a lot of times, every machine doesn't just have a serial number, it has a biomed number attached to it too.
Mm-hmm. I've seen that.
Yeah. And so, your hospital may or may not have that, and that's okay. But the next thing is something that you're going to make up. Now, when you call this up, when you say I'm using pump serial number 002536 248, blah, 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 and this great big long number, Epic doesn't like numbers. And so I would anticipate the other programs don't like them either. I mean, you can get 1 to 9, 1, 2, 3, all the way to 9. But once you write the number 10, Epic gets confused between 1 and 10 because they both have a 1 in it. And it'll start calling up every single machine that's got a 1 in it. And so that's why you cannot use numbers. So that would be the obvious thing, pump 1, pump 2, pump 3. You can't do that. Don't do that. You need to name them. And I encourage you to have some fun with this. I always tell people, have fun with it. Pick a movie you like. And all the characters are in that movie. So name all of your pumps after this one particular movie, like Star Wars. And then name all your heater coolers after, I don't know, baseball teams. Just pick something. Have fun with it. You can name after your kids. Your kids would love that. They'd be flattered to have their name at work that you use every day on your pumps. So you're going to take your hardware. You got to write all of them down. You got to go through this process first. And so ultimately, whenever Epic asks you what hardware are you using, you're going to say, I'm using a pump, and it's named this. And when it does that, when it pulls that name up, in the background, it's going to pull up all of this information. So you're legally covered if you have any problems. Everybody knows what machines were involved. And you can have multiple machines. So you may have you'll have a heater cooler going and a pump going, and probably your point of care machine's going. You can add, any equipment that you need to add, you can add to it. So, but the most important thing is that you construct this spreadsheet right here. You want to have a serial number, the biomed number, and the name of it in a spreadsheet. And that way everybody knows what is what. And I would encourage you to do this. Take all your serial numbers and put them in numerical order. And then every name, put them in alphabetical order with the serial number. It kind of gives you a sense of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So Alice, Barbie, Charlie. Mm-hmm. It gives you a sense of order. And I didn't do that whenever I did this. And looking back, I would have done that way. So the next thing you need to do, and this is all stuff that you're going to be doing before you start building. And you want to have all this stuff ready to go. You want to have all of your disposables. And what you can do with all your disposables is you're going to write them down. You're going to write their name. First off, let's do this. You're going to write the disposables by category. And I'm going to give you some categories the way that I did it. And this actually worked very, very well. So the first thing that I put together was circuit components. Let's see, circuit components, yeah. Components, sorry about the handwriting. And the first portion of this is tubing packs.
Excuse me.
Sure.
Thank you.
So what we did was, or what I did, was I took all the tubing packs that we had for all the different procedures, because a procedure could be a pump procedure. It could also be like an ECMO procedure, and there are different packs. It could be a tandem heart procedure. It could be angiovac. And so you want to organize it all by tubing packs. Then, let's see if I can go down with this. after tubing packs, I called it additional procedure packs. And what those are things like extra cardioplegia tubing, extra 3/8 inch tubing. What else? Purge lines, extra transducers, vacuum assist packs, extra vacuum assist. It's just extra packs that you may need if you contaminate something or if something breaks. And then our tubing packs included oxygenators. So with a lot of procedures, you'll have to cut in an oxygenator. And so number 3 for me was three for me was additional oxygenators. And so that would be, for ECMOs or for just things like that, because these components have to be ready for all different kinds of procedures.
Yeah, and then you wouldn't be able to just go in there and pick it, because that's going to be how you manage your inventory within Epic.
And that was interesting.
What you use.
What was interesting is that we tried really hard to make. We tried really hard to make it work with inventory, so we could manage inventory. Epic wouldn't have let that happen.
No.
Nope. Sorry. Can't. You're going to have to count. You still have to go and hand count everything, and you still have to have somebody come in and make sure that you've got the right amount of stuff, or your perfusionist has to go, wherever they are to get the extra supplies. You still have to go do that by hand. Epic just did not cooperate. And maybe, it is what it is, I guess. You kind of stuck with that. Yeah. Let me do this. The next step was, let me push clear. Cannulas.
This is number 4.
This is number 4, yes. Cannulas. And the way I broke it down, now we ended up going a different way than this, but looking back, if I had done it this way, I'd be a lot happier. And so you have your central cannulas. For all your different surgeons. And that's another thing. We did not write the cannulas down with the surgeon's name beside it. And honestly, I think that would have helped a lot, because a lot of surgeons use different cannulas. And rather than try to look these cannulas up with their name, if we look them up with a surgeon, we might have been able to pull them up faster. So it might help to do that. But sometimes you have multiple surgeons using one cannula. So that's kind of a counter to that. But that's something I was thinking of, is attaching the surgeons' names to these things. And whatever slang terms you call them. Because the real name of a cannula is not what the slang terms are. And the slang terms are going to be individual for each hospital. So it doesn't hurt to use your individual hospital slang terms.
Yeah, we call it like pericardial sumps. We call it like a weighted sucker. We call it wigglies.
Right. We call them drop sumps.
Yeah.
Wigglies. And those are things that you want to incorporate into the name of it. So the next step was central arterial, central venous, and you need to have all this stuff done and ready to go before Epic asks you for them. And then I went into the femoral hybrid cannulas. Oops. Now remember, we didn't do it quite like this, but this is after the fact. I went back and did this, and I was like, this would have been, a pretty good way to do it. So femoral arterial cannulas. So hybrid cannulas can be either arterial or venous, and that's why they got their own category, just to let you know. So you have femoral arterial cannulas and femoral venous cannulas. And I actually put their slang terms first. I named them by their slang terms, like 19 multi. So it doesn't say exactly what the REF numbers are on them, but that's something you got to look into, because sometimes you have, a 19 femoral cannula, but you'll have 3 different kinds of it. Just because one of them comes with an insertion kit and one of them doesn't, and so they have different names, and that's
where one has the lower lock on the connector and one doesn't.
Yes.
One has a flange for a sewing ring, and the other one has that little stopper
yeah.
that you can move. Yeah, it's like an Easy F21, and there's an EZ21.
Easy
yeah.
C, Easy C, and
Yeah,
Easy F.
exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
It drive you crazy.
Yeah, it will. So you're going to be, but yeah, I'm giving you the broad categories right now, but I'm also giving you some input on what ideas to think of while you're putting these in the broad categories. So the next big category that we looked at, so we did livers where we're at. So our next cannula category was livers. And this is for big institutions. So hopefully you don't have to have a big institution. Hopefully you don't have to do this. Let's
Well, you may not have to do the liver, but the basic concept is the same. You're going to have to do this.
yeah.
No matter whether you're a small institution or smaller, doing 200, mostly cabbages and some valves, there's still a whole lot of stuff. Mm-hmm. Not as much as, obviously a place that does transplants and VADs and all that kind of stuff, but it's still a lot. You also have more resources. You have more stuff, but you have more resources, more people. A program doing 200 hearts a year might only be a 1 or 2 person show, right?
Mm-hmm. And they'll have 1 or 2 surgeons that all use identical equipment, and they use minimal amounts of it because they're going to be doing just cabs, for example. So, and they're not going to need, hopefully, not going to need visceral cannulas and renal cannulas because you're not going to be doing, thoracos.
Right.
But they're here. It's in the list. So that I'm just going to write down these cannulas that I wrote down. So these are pretty much all the cannulas.
You're writing it, but I don't think anybody knows what you're writing.
Okay, because it hasn't got up there yet. Oh, there's more. Visceral and renal perfusion cannulas. The grafts. Grafts are usually pulled by nurses, but I go ahead and write them down in my list so that I can know what graft went there. I can input it into Epic and say this graft went there. I don't need to be specific about the name of it. I don't need a brand or a company like that. I just need to know that this size of a graft went there. And oftentimes I'll describe them with, I'll describe them with the amount of branches that come off of them, because that's important. Sometimes you've got, multiple branches coming off these things. For like in the descending aorta, you have two coming off for renals and 1 coming off for a visceral, or some coming around that they've got the built-in great vessels on them. And so I kind of tried to count for that, but also I don't worry about that as much because that's going to be a nursing thing. The next big category, number 5, is cardioplegia. And with the cardioplegia, I include delivery systems. So you'll have like an octopus or something like that.
Yeah.
All those delivery systems. And I include, well, that's it. So there's delivery systems. And then there's retrograde cannulas. And coronary ostial cannulas. And I also include needle vent needles, what do you call those things? Antegrade needle vents. I can't remember what the real fancy words are for them. And so that's all part of the cardioplegia setup. And then, this is 6, right?
Yep.
6. Vents, sumps, and suckers. And I put them all into one section. And so, that's where that's where I put the aortic root needles, was here. I was wondering where they went to, the aortic root needles. Because aortic root needles are also cardioplegia delivery devices for antegrade. And I stuck them in this area. And maybe they could have gone into the
cardioplegia delivery,
the antegrade
but
system.
you put them in the aortic
I put them
root.
in because it's considered a sump or a vent.
Got it.
And then so your vent catheters, your sumps and suckers. Let's search right. Might as well write it down. Vents, And I separated out drop sumps. There's generally 2 drop sumps. And sucker tips. Oops. So these are the things like here. And I'm going to give you a quick shortcut for all this at the very end. Now we're on 7. And 7 is dilators. And these are things that we use for the femoral cannulas.
Okay, like an insertion kit.
Yeah, an insertion kit. I call them
Vessel
dilators.
dilators, yeah.
Guide wires. So a lot of, when you do a lot of these femoral insertions, you get stuck dealing with guide wires. And, so you want to have all your guide wires done. And then I went into number 9, which is special procedures. And those are things that they don't go with anything, so they're considered special procedures. They're not necessarily a part of the normal components that you'll use, so they are special procedures. And that's stuff like balloon pump supplies, Impella, Protec. See, we did a lot of different stuff over there. Golly, when you
I
look
don't know
at,
if you knew this or not. I hope you don't mind if I interrupt you.
No, go ahead.
People in the audience may not know this, but I think it's official now that LivaNova has let go of or stopped the distribution of the Tandem LifeSpark, and it is and they're selling the Protec as an individual catheter. So you can just buy it like you do an Avalon or you do a Crescent.
That's amazing.
Finally.
Yeah. Well, they made so much money selling them as a part of the kit. So when you would buy the Protec, all we wanted was the cannula.
Right.
But they refused to sell the cannula without the LifeSpark.
With the LifeSpark was like an extinguishing spark. Yeah.
Overall, I liked it. The thing I like, a quick side note on Protec, the thing I'm most impressed with LifeSpark is, so it was originally called Tandem Heart.
Yeah.
So Tandem Heart, the guys that initially built it and got it FDA approved, what they did was they got the pump head approved as a arterial centrifugal pump. So it could actually be used as an actual pump on a regular. You could take the Tandem Heart and you could use it like you were pumping a case, and that was brilliant. And they got it approved on its own without the kits and everything. And that was very smart of them because that allowed them to go easily into where they wanted to go, and that was like a left heart support device. But that's just an interesting side note for them. And these are the special procedures. And it's all the equipment that you need with balloon pumps. It's all equipment, and it's all listed down below it. And you need to have all this done before they come to you and say, what do you want?
So you did this like on a spreadsheet.
I do these on spreadsheets.
So let me just ask a question, if I can, is for our audience that's watching, because some of them may be confronted with this issue. Do you offer any kind of consulting work if somebody wanted to reach out to Thomas DiSalvo via telephone and say, hey, or email or whatever, and say, hey, man, I've got to put this together. Is there any way you can give me some guidance on this?
Does that interfere with my job description?
No.
Hell yes.
Okay. Because
I would be happy to help people out.
He really did. He put together, he put together, I've seen it, some really impressive work, which he's not sharing for proprietary, I guess, or protection.
I also don't want to get in trouble at the old hospital. I like them.
And you don't want to, but not only that, but you can't give everything away for free, right? I mean, that's not reality. I mean, you just can't. But I have seen it, and he's giving you the information of how it's done, but you've done the work, and it is a lot of work. Anyway, I'll let
So and it was a joint effort. My coworker and
how do they get a hold of you? You're Thomas DiSalvo at
Thomas
what's your
DiSalvo
personal
at
email?
gmail.com.
Thomas DiSalvo at gmail.com. Yeah, if that's what you want to talk to them about, just send them a message. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is something that's in your bailiwick.
Like I said, I'm very, very proud of this one. We worked, my coworker and I, my former boss, we worked very hard on this, and to try to figure it out. I mean, to try to figure out Epic was in the very beginning. I was lost. They were trying to say stuff, and they were trying to tell us how it worked, but they weren't getting the point across until it turns out the big people, the smart people, SMART people.
Yes, I remember those.
Yeah, they actually were learning too. And so they couldn't really explain things. And then when we were trying to go back to them and say, what are you talking about? It took a long time for us all to really figure out what went where. Yeah. And also what went where, because the Epic has a series of stuff across the top, across the sides, across this side over here, across the bottom, and then all along here, all this stuff. And so you want to use the right terminology when you describe each section. And so that way people know what you're wanting to go here in this section and what this section's purpose is. And then in this section over here, what its purpose is. And of course the top, and of course the bottom, the timelines. And then of course what goes in the middle, where your actual meat of your Epic is.
Your record.
Yeah. And so, but yeah, that's kind of like, I kind of got off topic there. So the next thing you want to do, and you want to think about everywhere you cannulate at. And you want to describe these cannulations, because when you say that you pulled an aortic cannula, let's say you pulled a central cannula. Oops. You want to say where it went. Did it go into the ascending? Maybe it didn't go in the ascending. Maybe it went in the descending. Just because it's a central cannula, it doesn't mean it has to be used in the ascending aorta. They can put them different places, or they can you can use a femoral cannula and cannulate the ascending aorta if you want to, and it's done all the time. And I know for people that work in simpler institutions where you have the same surgeons, the same patterns, the same things, when you have access to these many different things, they can go anywhere. And some surgeon he has this brilliant idea one night. He wakes up and has this dream, and he's like, "Holy cow, I can do this!" Next day he comes in and says, "I want to put this cannula over here," and it happens all the time. And it's nothing really wrong with that. It's off label because it's supposed to go here, but if it works, great. And if it just be prepared for it, and have your system ready to go. And the way we did it and the way we should have done it. We should have done it the way I just described it. You go from the cannulas to where it went. The way we did it is we went where it went backwards to the cannulas. And I think that was a little more, I think that created a little bit more of a challenge for figuring out what cannula went where, because we weren't prepared to say that a femoral cannula went into the ascending. Mm-hmm. So it's better to choose your cannula first.
You mean your location?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
I think that's what. Do you mean?
You want to use your.
You're saying it makes more sense to choose where it's going first, or the cannula?
The cannula first.
The cannula first. Okay.
And then where it went.
Okay.
So, because the way we did it backwards. We
where it went and then pick the cannula.
Yeah,
for
and
it.
because the way that Epic is designed, you can't just pick any cannula because we had it confined to only picking within this, like in the central. If it went in the central aorta, we were that cannula was only confined to going in the central aorta.
Because you had it listed backwards, in the central aortic.
And these are just things you learn.
Right.
You
so
learn these
your
things over time.
peripheral cannulas are listed in the peripheral section. So if you pick central cannulation, it won't give you the option of picking that cannula.
Then you had to go into, luckily for us, we created a other on everything. So you've got others everywhere. So you had the opportunity to write other. But that was, we could have made things a little bit easier had we done it that way. To think about every single place that you can cannulate at, I did that, and I wrote it down. It's not that hard, but it's a lot, especially when you're cannulating in such a big institution, doing such a large amount of various complex cases where things are just cannulated everywhere, and you're trying to give yourself as much flexibility as you can. So I tried to cover these. So we try to say, who the people are that are doing it, what you need to do ahead of time, which is your hardware, your disposables, your cannulation sites, and now we start getting into more really complex stuff, because you have to think about drugs. And what you want to do with drugs is you want to write every single drug that a perfusionist gives in a variety of doses that can be given. And the hard part about drugs is that a perfusionist is not licensed to give drugs, only anesthesia or nurses, but in particular anesthesia. So this portion has to come from anesthesia. So it's built into our platform. And actually, our entire platform is built under anesthesia, so perfusion does not have an independent platform. It's all under anesthesia. But some things are easier to do. Most things are easier to do. Drugs are not. Drugs have to come through the anesthesia section. But that's okay. Worry about that later. Worry about now every single drug that you use in every possible way that you could use it. Some shortcuts for you. So if you would give, albumin, say 12.5 grams in 50 cc's, or albumin 25 grams in 100 cc's, or even 25 grams in 50 cc's. So you want to be prepared with all of this information to give to Epic. Things like norepi. Now, norepi is my biggest problem because we give a lot of norepi all the time. Imagine having to chart it. And so you spend a lot of time on the computer system.
Yeah, you're given a bolus.
So, and you're trying to type it in fast. And in the meantime, you're not looking at anything else, and you're distracted. And then also, you may give that bolus, right, because you needed to at that time. But by the time you get to Epic to put it in, the bolus happened in a timeline. The bolus happens here. But in the real world, well, not in the real world, in the timeline that you entered it here. So it's in there, right? And
so the pressure's 40 here.
40 here. And
80 there.
Right. And now you're saying that you gave norepi.
Right.
So you need to go backwards in time and set it for when you needed it. You can do that. You can go forwards and backwards in time. It's not that hard, but it's not that much fun either. So, and that's just kind of a quick tidbit information. So you want to try to match things up. Like you say you're warming and you start warming actually, and you forgot to chart it. So it happens here, but suddenly you chart it here. Epic is looking at the temperatures. It knows what happened. And let's say that you forgot to cool, right? So you say, oh, well, I'm just going to say I cooled, right? Epic is spying on you. It knows you didn't cool. So timing is important. But the thing I want to talk about mostly, I'm trying to tell you right now for drugs, just start knowing all the drugs that you use and their possible doses, like heparin. And what you're going to do is you're going to write them down, heparin 5 cc, heparin 10 cc. But there's always that other for when you give more. And so these are just quick buttons. Mm-hmm. So you can maybe put 20, you can have a quick button. Bam, you hit that button, it populates, then you push enter, and then you set the time because you actually gave it over here and you're over here, unless you were quick enough. So that's what I'm trying to get you to do. Is you want to set all your drugs up, think about everything that you use, and I have them all written down, but it took a lot of work to get all that written down.
I hate saying this. I hope everybody will forgive me. I'm glad, and this is really sad to say this because I'm really glad my career is coming to an end.
I am not.
I really am.
What am I going to do?
I don't know what I would do. This is just, maybe I shouldn't use this word. It's bullshit. It's bullshit. That's all it is. It's ridiculous that you know, I have to go and spending all this time on this. I like to do the case. I take care of the patient. I do my job, you know, whatever, and I don't have to sit. I just think that the old style of paper charting was really good. I liked it.
It worked. You know,
It worked.
you could fudge a lot, which is nice, but also, you know, sometimes it's just easier to write it down. When you're constantly back checking yourself, when did you actually start cooling? When did you actually start warming? When did things like cross clamp going on? I mean, anyhow, I'm going to try to move forward if I can.
Yes, please. Yes, because I can stay on this.
Yeah.
I can talk about this from a philosophical perspective for a long time. But I heard you laughing back there. Our studio audience is now laughing.
Yeah.
They know how I feel.
Okay, so another topic we want to get onto is after you've done all of that, you've got your disposables and you've got your drugs set up and ready to go. Now you want to think about your procedures. And this is where Epic gets very, for me, it's hard. It's frustrating because Epic, there's quite a lot of frustrating things about Epic, quite honestly. And for it to have been existing as long as it has, and they haven't listened to clinicians who should be going back there and telling them, fix this, please. And I'll just give you one example. So when you go onto a screen, sometimes at the top of the screen, there's a little X here. There's not a button anywhere that says enter. So you click all the buttons for the information you need, and they're all ready to go. There's not an enter button. If you push the X, that's enter.
Oh my God.
Then it'll have this. On the next screen, a different screen, all the information you need. So you're clicking all the information, or you're writing in the numbers, or clicking things.
Typing in the numbers.
Typing the numbers. There'll be a little box down here, and it says close. Does it say enter? No, it says close. Then, let's see, what are the three? There's three of them that just drove me crazy. The other one was, there's another one. I have it in one of my videos that I made, but there's another one that's not enter. Nowhere does it ever say the word enter. That should be everything. When you want to input the information finalize the information, you should push enter. But they don't do it that way. They use close, they use that bar, and there's no consistency. Mm. Epic, if you're listening, fix that. So the next thing you got to do is you want to take every procedure that you do. And so I always try to explain to people, I don't like the fact that when you write on your perfusion sheet, your procedure is a cab. As a perfusionist, I don't think that that's our procedure. Our procedure is CPB. It's cardiopulmonary bypass. If you want to be specific, you could say with cardioplegia arrest. You could say, you can add deep hypothermia. You can add intermittent cross clamping instead of cardioplegia. You could say, I don't know. You can say a lot of different things, but our procedure is bypass, and there's a certain number of steps that you go through when you're on bypass, and so you have to start thinking about your steps. Your first step is sign in. Oops. So whoever the person is in charge of the procedure needs to sign in. Say that they're there. That's their in time. And that starts the billing. Now, billing will work. The macros, which is what these things kind of are, they're designed to make billing for the hospital easier. And by doing so, they make it harder on us. But it makes it easier for this hospital to bill. And there's I'll just say this. There's two billing setups. One of them is a Category 1, and one of them is Category 2. So the first category, and it's not the actual name of it. The actual name suddenly just escaped me. I just used the word category. But so this is a lower price, and this is a higher price.
Is one Medicare and private insurance?
Not necessarily, because a Category 1 would be an off pump. It'd be a pump standby.
Ah, okay.
And this would be on pump. Or a category 1 would be like a balloon pump, IBP.
Mm-hmm.
Or it might be an IBP standby. And that's up to the hospital and their people to figure out, their billing people, because they've got to go through all the codes. And these people are, so your billing people are also working extensively with that smart person to try to tell them what can we bill with and how can we make them work with the macro. So when you choose your macro, which let's say it's cardiopulmonary bypass, now opens up the system for your ability to do your charting. And this is charting of like time in, your person, their sign in, that you did your pre-bypass checklist, and also by going into the pre-bypass checklist, you can also go to the pre-bypass checklist and physically check everything. Check it all off. Check. And it goes in the pre-bypass checklist. And you keep moving down. So patient in the room. And you keep moving down. Let's say timeout, anesthesia timeout. And then surgeon timeout. Keep going. But you get the drift of that, right?
Yeah.
So
the flow of the
heparin,
the flow of the case,
on bypass, those kind of things.
ACT, cannulation.
Yeah. Now, where it gets no fun on these macros, and please, if you're listening, Epic, do something about this. If you sign in a macro for a off pump case,
and it converts,
P conversion. You need to be able to open up another macro, but you can't. You have to delete this macro, and deleting this macro is a difficult thing to do, by the way. Just so you know, it's not easy. It's not fun to delete macros. And then you got to reopen up on the correct macro. So that's just some tidbits about that.
So what happens to all that stuff that you did before?
Exactly. It's gone.
You have to put it all back
Yes.
in. Oh, wow.
And so I literally created cheat sheets for everything. And I would handwrite the times on the cheat sheet for everything, from everything, because I never knew what was going to happen next. And I know a lot of my coworkers, they didn't. And I don't know how they handled when there was something like that happening. And it's not my job to worry about them. I don't know what they did. I know they got through it. Somehow they survived. For me, I had everything handwritten down, ready to go. So when something like that happened, I was able to go back into the new macro and get it all done right.
Okay, because you had duplicated it.
Right.
So you now have an electronic record that you have to delete. So you had to make a paper chart.
I always had the paper chart going the same time as I was doing the electronic chart.
That's just absolutely absurd.
Well,
I don't know what everybody else out there in web world thinks, but I'd love to get your thoughts on the need to do that, but not on every case. If you were going on bypass, so
the
these are
majority
only,
of time,
right?
Yeah.
It has to be a case where you started off with one thing and ended up something else,
Right.
Yeah.
So, other than routine procedural stuff, following a timeline from a particular procedure that goes down, you also need to set up every variable possible. And an example of that is temperatures. So your temperature, you're going to be, let's see, cooling, drifting. You're going to be maintaining, and this is the one that everybody forgets. Maintaining. Because if you really want, when a surgeon says, say, cool to 32, well, what do? You get to 32 degrees. What happens next? Well, I got there. Now I'm maintaining. And I think maintaining is the thing everybody forgets. And I use the word maintaining a lot. And then you're going to start rewarming. Now, once you hit warm temperatures and you stabilize there, you could put maintain if you wanted to. I don't. I just go ahead and leave it as warming because I don't know what's going to happen. And even though I'm stabilized, I just go. That's one thing I don't worry about. But this part here, this maintain part, I think is important. And this, you can if you want to, but so that's the temperatures, and you're going to have to say, so let's say on circ arrest, think of everything that can happen on circ arrest. Well, it's going to be pump off. It's going to be
antegrade or retrograde cerebral.
ACP/RCP. It's going to be flat out circ arrest.
Nothing.
Yeah. And so you got to think of all of these things. And that's where the experience of somebody like me comes in, because I've done it all already. And so it's like having within a macro, you always have a backup section. So if the macro doesn't have it, you can use the backup section. So if you're in the macro of CPB and you put in a balloon pump, IABP, then you switch over to where the big section is that has the balloon pump, all the balloon pump IABP, that has all the balloon pumps. So on, off, exchange. It's got everything within there. It's because the macro that you're using is the CPB macro. And you can't switch over the balloon pump macro. Because if you do that, you got to delete the CPB macro. Does that make sense?
It does, but it sounds terrible. I mean, I'm just going to tell you, it just sounds terrible.
It's not the easiest thing to work with. Right. And I know there's a lot of people who are looking right now and you're saying, oh yeah, I do it all the time, it's not a problem. Well, you kind of assimilate it. And the assimilation process takes a long time. And also I've never reviewed one of your charts.
But you're also looking at, depends on your practice. Mm-hmm. This isn't meant in a negative way, but do you have a bread and butter practice, coronaries, a couple of valves, that's what you're going to do? Or do you have the elephant trunks, circ arrests all the time, auto transplantations, all the crazy stuff that can be done. Mm-hmm. And if you don't have that craziness, Epic probably isn't that bad. But you're doing a pump case, and now you put a balloon pump in to wean off bypass. Well, that sounds like that's going to be a problem to me from what you just described.
It just means that you have to have those extra sections there and
built
be able to
in
use
already.
them.
The key is having them built into the CPB macro, because I understand what you're saying now. So it's all about, if you don't build it right up front,
you're going to pay the price.
You're going to pay the price.
You're going to be, but you'll learn, and so the next time you'll have it. And it took, there's a learning curve. I pre-did so much stuff so that when we were called in these meetings, I would literally be able to hand the paper to my boss. They would say, what kind of order you want? And I would hand it to him. He would review it, and he would say, well, I don't like that, I don't like that, I don't like that, I don't like that. And then he would just hand it to them. And so pretty much the work was done, and I did a lot. I had all the sheets ready to go to hand to him. And then he was able to take the information and say yes or no, yes, no, yes, no, and then also add to it too. And there were some good things that he did that I liked a lot. And certainly we worked well as a team, I will say that. And also with all of the whole process everybody worked really well together. But using it is still as good of a job as I think we did. And certainly when somebody like DNV comes to you and they say that is the best perfusion, DNV, the accreditations people.
Okay.
I think it was DNV who's the other one? They accredit the hospitals. JACO.
Oh.
Yeah, we used DNV, and I think but we didn't use JACO anymore. They switched over or whatever. Same thing. But they literally looked at us. They looked at our program, and they said that was the best perfusion Epic program they'd ever seen. And they said that we should be being consulted by other hospitals to try to put this together.
Well, there you go.
It's very flattering. I'm saying this is the most flattering. I am so proud of this.
DiSalvo@gmail.com, and he can help you build your Epic program. And I know that Memorial is trying to shift to that. But of course, for us, the places we go to, our heart-lung machines are not designed for it, except for the one place at St. Luke's where we have Essence. But even
You
with
attach
that,
a neuron to it. The neurons will attach to the S5, and they'll attach to the Essence. They'll also attach to the anesthesia machines.
Okay.
So we also had a CDI, and the CDI attached to the neuron that the pump was attached to.
Okay.
And so that one neuron can do several things, but we tried to keep them separated because these anesthesia machines are also moved in and out of rooms occasionally. Pumps are moved in and out of rooms. But once a neuron is attached to something, don't unattach it.
Mm-hmm.
There is a process of saying what neuron is attached to each machine.
That's digital.
It's not fun. It's relatively simple, but it's just not fun. It's just an extra thing you have to do. And so it's kind of frustrating. So these neurons, they're very important. And when it knows, if it's here, if you've got neuron A here, and neuron A is used to talking to pump 3, which don't call it 3. You have to call it a name. It has to be a word.
Okay.
Pump Joe. It's used to that. But for some reason, and this would happen a lot too. We would have a neuron just suddenly decide that it wasn't neuron A anymore. It was neuron C. And neuron C was attached to pump Thomas. So the neuron is not capturing the information for Epic. And we're doing a case. And now we've had this period of time go by with just blank spots. And you're like, what? What's going on? And so you got to go back in, figure out what neuron you're attached to, and make sure that neuron now knows that it's actually attached to, it's not C, it's actually A, and A really is attached to Joe. There's challenges. There's challenges. It's not like you're going to get away with saying, I don't want to do this. You're going to have, you got to make it work.
Yep.
And
sounds like
and
it.
it's challenging. So did I cover some big stuff. I covered, you want to know your hardware, you want to know your disposables, you want to know your procedures type that you do. So and then a lot of machines, not a lot, a few machines are not attached to a neuron. So you know what that means? That means you've got a hand chart and then go back and put it into Epic in another section that is dedicated for that machine. You could bring in an iPad like this, my iPad, and you could bring it into the room, and you could also use it to chart while you were there, but there's no neuron on there, so you are charting on Epic. You are charting. So those are your choices. You hand chart and then go backwards and find a computer and say the procedure you did, input the patient's name, the patient's numbers.
Well, what if they give you one of those cows? Does that not work?
What's a cow?
A computer on wheels?
Yes. So what we had was we had actual iPads that we would take into the room, or little, what do you call these things?
Tablets.
Tablet, yeah. These weren't tablets. They're not desktop computers, but they're,
tablets.
Yeah.
Or,
A
laptop.
computer, a laptop. That's the word. We have a laptop, and so you could type in the words. The tablets were challenging because you could type in on the screen, which was very difficult. You could have bring the
keyboard.
The keyboard, yeah. Yeah, I'm glad you're here.
Yeah, it's okay.
But you could do that too. It's just that sometimes the computer battery would die. Because for some reason the plugins, somebody would not, they wouldn't be there. So somebody would take one off another machine. So you take that machine and you get there, you're all excited, you're ready to go, and you don't have a computer. Oh, no, you have a computer, right? And it's on, right? And then all of a sudden it dies. And you're just sitting there going, okay. So now you're hand charting, so that you can go back and find a computer to re-input everything back into Epic again. And these are just things that to be aware of, I guess, because they happen. And I try not to complain about it because it's Epic is here.
I feel like you need a drink. So, are there any questions from the studio? From the the virtual audience? I'm sorry. Any questions? Hey, Chul Shim. Any questions? If you want to do it on the the YouTubes or the FaceTimes and the
LinkedIn.
the LinkedIn, yeah, whatever it's
LinkedIn.
called. Yeah, if there are any questions, let us know. But so your next lecture, this was heavy. You know, I mean, it's easier to talk about, I think, I hate to say it, it's easier to talk about death than it is to talk about this. I mean, I don't know that I'm ever going to want to, like I said, that just sounds painful. But your next lecture, well, if we get any questions, I'll let you know, is going to be on the oxyhemoglobin dissociation curve. And we can take a short break if you'd like. If you need to get another drink or another cup of coffee or
How
whatever.
much time do we have?
But 55 minutes.
Okay, good, yeah.
We got time. We could take a...
Because I'm really excited about this topic.
So you're going to be doing how the oxyhemoglobin dissociation curve can influence your NIRS readings, your near-infrared spectroscopy or your cerebral oximetry, whatever you want to call it.
Yep.
So it's going to be very interesting because I know they can do that.
So here's a precursor for you. The very first time I wrote on this topic was in 2006, and so I pulled up that old PowerPoint that I did, and I was looking at it, and I cannot believe how much I've learned in the last 25 years. 20 years.
That'd be
19
years.
19 years. Because
18. It's 2004.
Because everything I learned back then is still the same on the internet right now. And I feel like, do not miss this next talk. Don't take a break, but don't miss this next talk, because I have taken what we knew about the oxyhemoglobin dissociation curve and brought it to turbo, like way up here. This is like tallest building in the world stuff. From being where we were here, when you see all the things that I'm going to bring into this, this is going to be a great talk.
Okay, 5 minutes. Let's do it.
Yep.
5-minute break. I'm just going to stay right here. Hey, everybody. Welcome back. All right, we're going to jump right into it. The oxyhemoglobin dissociation curve and its impact on NIRS. Thomas DiSalvo.
Welcome back, everyone. We're just going to go straight into it, like Joe says. My name is Thomas DiSalvo, and I have been studying the oxyhemoglobin dissociation curve for the last 27 years.
That's a long time.
When I first found out about this thing, like everybody else, the only reason we learned it was to take a test.
Yes.
And there was no reason to employ it, no reason to try to use it, because I was young, and because all I thought it was just if I could pass the test and say that when then you had a high CO2, the curve went right, and that's really all I needed to know. But after many years of really working with this and thinking about this, I started giving talks on it, because it's absolutely intriguing and cool that what's happening inside of a cell, and this one cell is part of a huge organism, and that one cell has an impact, but so do all the other cells. So everything is happening, and every cell is having its own oxyhemoglobin curve, and it's just really cool to think about it like that. So I brought up some disclosures. Oh, I was going to tell you. So I don't have any disclosures, I guess. And I do have 4 videos. 2 of them are the same, and one of them is, and two of them are the same. Total of 4 videos. I got these videos off of YouTube, and I'm going to give you the name of the video so that you can look it up on YouTube if you want to, so that you can kind of see what we're looking at here. You don't really need to see these videos, but they will enhance things quite a bit. And I'm not going to show the videos on the program, because I've decided that the absolute best way to do this is to let you watch the videos on your own. That way we don't get in trouble for sharing somebody else's work. Does that make sense?
I think as long as you give it credit.
Well, anyhow, we could try that.
That's okay.
We could try it either way.
It doesn't matter to me.
But I'm going to go over the things I'm going to talk about today. Is first oxygen demand, then about acid base, and the oxyhemoglobin dissociation curve, and then cerebral perfusion, and then cerebral oximetry. What does NIRS stand for anyway?
Near-Infrared Spectroscopy.
Oh, okay. I think I have that word on one of the pictures I use. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take all of those things together and we're going to apply them to the oxyhemoglobin dissociation curve. And basically, I'm going to take you into the matrix so that when you pump a case, what you're doing is thinking globally, this massive picture, versus saying, am I in between 7.35 to 7.45? Is my CO2 35 to 45? Is my potassium 4.0? Is my albumin, whatever? Instead of you thinking in terms of those numbers, which the majority of people, that's what you do when you do a case. You think, I've got to match these numbers, and so I've pumped a great case. And in reality, what I'm going to show you, I hope it sends you into thoughts that are really, really deep.
Can I interrupt you for
Sure.
1 second? Can I tell you a quick story?
Sure.
Tell my colleagues out here in web world. We went on bypass for a mitral valve repair that turned into a replacement, but that's a different topic altogether. I was ahead of it. I was on today. I was like, you know what? We're flooding the field with CO2, and I turned my sweep up to 8. And I did a gas, and it came back. And the first thing that I noticed was that there was a 0 after the decimal point, 7.0. And then I saw my CO2 was 104. I was like, what the hell? I mean, I'm at 8 liters of sweep. And I was like, what, why? So I was like, that just doesn't make any sense to me. So I got up and I leaned over and I was stretching my head, looking over the surgeon's shoulder, and they had set the pump sucker right next to the
CO2.
outlet CO2. And I really didn't even have it on that high, but I was like, okay, one of two things is going to have to happen. You either move that sucker or I got to turn it off. What do you got to turn it off for? Because it's right next to the CO2. I'm sucking all the CO2. And that's how I got the CO2 down, was moving the sucker.
Moving the sucker, exactly.
Yeah, I had to just turn it off.
That's funny because and you were already to sweep at 8. So my first thing would have been, what's my sweep? And then my second thing would be, okay, 7.0. Okay, that's at 108. That's
104.
100. Yeah, that's no way. There's something going on.
So
There's
where
something
was my
caused this.
curve at? How far off the scale was my curve?
Let me just say, your brain was getting a lot of oxygen.
A lot.
It was wide open.
A lot. Yeah, a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. So this first video, if you want to look it up, it's on the Matrix.
We can play it.
Okay.
I'll
show you how to do it.
Well, here, no, we can. What's the best way to do this?
I'll show you. I came prepared. So I'm going to do this.
How are you going to share your phone?
Watch.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Copy. And this is just for practice, I guess. And then go here. And then go chat publicly as Thomas M. DiSalvo. That is me. Then go like this. Paste. Send. All right. I've sent the video in on the comment section.
Oh.
So now, I don't know if we're going to be able to play it or not. We have use our magic of our producers.
In the
in the comments.
chat or the
in the
comments?
chat. In the chat on YouTube.
No, I don't have it. No, it didn't show up. Mm-hmm.
Open the phone browser.
No, let's just move on.
All right. And what this picture is, it's just the Matrix. The opening scene from the Matrix when the lines are falling down like that.
Yeah.
So what I want you to picture in your head is all these lines are falling down. These code is falling, right? That code is actually numbers. It's all the numbers that we deal with, from blood gases, blood pressures, saturations. All these numbers are flying down, and it's all that information there. And it's just kind of a cool way to look at it because we're being bombarded by this information, and what are we going to do with it? So the very first thing that we just say is, what is oxygen demand? And cellular oxygen demand is what each cell needs. How much oxygen does each cell need? And it varies by by organ. Like the head, the brain needs a lot of oxygen, and it probably has a high metabolism. I don't know, but something like what would be a low oxygen demand organ? I don't know. Pick one.
A quadriceps.
Yeah, that's not moving at all.
Comparatively.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's the type of tissue that it is, and that's what I mean by that, brain versus quadriceps, and the amount of metabolism that's going on, and the amount of sedation involved. Like if you're sleeping, right?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe if you're sleeping, then you're going to have a lot less, because it doesn't necessarily have to be actual sedation from drugs. And then temperature. Are you cold or are you hot? And now I know what everybody's thinking. Everybody's thinking, well, there's blood flow and there's blood pressure, and those don't count yet. We're talking about just the cell and what it needs and what controls its state. And those are the things. There might be one or two more. And because over the years I've added this to you don't just come up with 4 things immediately. It took 30 years to come up with 4 things. So if you know anything else, let me know. Let me see what I wrote here. Is the tissue itself under normal operating conditions or under stress? Hemodilution, coagulation cascade activation, complementary cascade activation, bank blood more than 3 days old. What's all that for? Don't worry about that. That's next. That's coming up next. But this is what controls a cell. When we get into oxygen demand, there's really only 2 things that are involved with this. Oxygen consumption and oxygen delivery. And for probably 25 years of my career as a perfusionist, I did not believe in oxygen delivery, and I did not understand it. What happened was we were forced to use oxygen delivery, and I learned that what we were doing, I always said that metabolically, as a perfusionist, you were screwed. What you got is what you got, because we're trying to flow between 1.8 and 2.4. And once you got to 2.4, you weren't supposed to overflow that. You follow the rules. This is how it goes. You maintain your pH at 7.35 to 7.45. There's just all these rules, right? And very regimented. So you could never satisfy the body's needs at even a cardiac index of 2.4. It's very difficult to satisfy the body's needs. So I just gave up on metabolism, and I gave up on DO2. It was like, I can't do this. Well, when we started following DO2, and we actually had to maintain this number of 270, a DO2I, to maintain that number, I suddenly started realizing that we were actually controlling for the things that are involved with DO2, which I'm going to get into. We were actually able to control the metabolic acidosis that was happening by flowing at a much higher rate, a 2.6 cardiac index, and it actually worked. So, learning lesson of number 438 million in my career, the flow rates 1.8 to 2.4 are too low. 2.6 works. 2.8 works. Now, there's problems with that, right? Because you could be overflowing your venous return, then your surgeon's upset because the field's flooded, and that happens. You can have too high of a blood pressure because you're flowing too hard, those kind of things. But for the most part, you really need to be striving for 2.6.
You also have to have the appropriate size cannulas
That's
for
true.
those kinds of flows, or the already hostile pressure environment in the heart-lung machine gets even higher and more hostile.
Right.
And you can
You're damaging the red blood cells, yeah.
Potentially. I don't know that you do, but it's potential.
And you're having to pull your vacuum assist at like -80, and that's another thing. I break the rules on vacuum assist all the time, but remember, I've learned in this long period of time that the rules are made to be broken.
They're guidelines.
Yeah.
That's what they are, as guidelines. And I don't know that, speaking of, when you look at the vacuum assist, I don't know that there's strong evidence, good evidence, that says having a negative pressure of -60 or -80 is going to be deleterious. I think some people argue you increase your GME. Do you? I don't think the evidence is strong enough for me to agree with that.
at a certain point, your bubble detectors would be going off. But also, you would be, and I've seen this happen. I don't know if you've ever seen this happen, but you can turn your vacuum assist up to a point where your blood flow actually goes down.
Yes.
And so suddenly you turn your vacuum assist down and your blood flow goes up without having raised your rheostat at all, raised your actual.
Well, I mean, that makes sense, right? Because
I've got lots of videos of that too.
You're increasing your negative pressure in your venous reservoir, which is where your centrifugal pump has to pull from. So the more resistance you create, if you don't change your RPMs but go up on your vacuum, your flow will go down. And if you're saying your level versus your flow, I'm not sure exactly what you're saying, because you can have it just so high that you suck all the tissue into, but just straight flow, yes. If you take your vacuum assist off, you're minus 40, minus 60, and just take it off, your flow is going to go woof all the way up, because you're now taking that resistance to flow away, of course.
And I think it's more dangerous when you've got less volume in your reservoir to do that, because you can. That's where the air transmissions come from, because you actually raise the volume up. It's being sucked up into the back, and it creates a position where air can slop through and cycle through your system, and that's where you're trusting your oxygenators and the new technologies we have nowadays to catch that.
Integrated arterial line filters, vents, so forth.
So the major thing we're going to talk about here is the oxygen demand, and that can you get the oxygen where it needs to go? And these formulas are just the formulas for VO2 and for DO2. I've used the CEI 550 for a long time, and so what I want to talk about the formulas is it's unrealistic to think that you're going to sit there and calculate these numbers while you're on pump. It's not going to happen. You're too busy doing other things. You don't need to pull out a calculator and try and punch in numbers.
It's on our app.
We can pull the app out.
You just take the app and just put in your information, and it calculates it for you.
You still have to put the information in.
It's really easy to do. $2.99.
Try the app. It's only $2.99. Yeah.
$2.99. Everybody's got $2.99. Come on.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
It's a great app.
I should have 13 sales before the end of today.
Sure, because it's a great app and it's only $2. Exactly. It's like $3. I love the app. I use it all the time. Luckily, there's this thing called the CDI 550. There used to be a couple of machines, but I think from what I can tell, CDI may be the only one left that does this magnitude of stuff. I know that Spectrum is doing something, but you got to buy a Spectrum, and the Spectrum is extremely expensive on its own. Not to mention, on its own, it's not that expensive, but when you buy the platform that goes with it, that's where they start costing money. But it's a nice machine, but I don't know, it's not. The CDI 550 is a nice accessory to go on any pump. It works great, and it can tag right into your neuron, your capsule, so that it goes straight into Epic, and all those numbers are transmitted directly for you, so you don't have to do calculations. Because when you get a blood gas back, that's when you want to do, at least every 15 minutes, whenever you do your blood gases, you can take your hemoglobin and your saturation and your blood flow, and you can put them into the formula, and it will spit out your DO2.
Well, at the risk of delaying you anymore, I don't do gases every 15 minutes. I don't do gases every 20 minutes. I do gases about every hour.
When needed, yeah.
Or if something has changed, right? If I'm doing a case and I'm going to be on bypass for 2 hours and 20 minutes, and I do my first gas and it looks great, and I'm not making any major changes, why do I need to do another gas? If we're in a critical care unit, we don't do them but every 6 hours. I know we're on bypass, but if nothing changes, anesthesia doesn't do them every 15 minutes.
No, they don't.
So why do we?
That's a personal preference for everybody. If you want to follow the rules, because there's breaking the guidelines, and there's within constraints the guidelines. I like your idea of doing it when needed. Yeah,
that's what I do. I think we over sample, and we are constantly we're doing gases because we know they're going to look good. Victory gas, but really at the end of the day, we just don't need to do it.
Right. So but the CDI will do the gases for you, and it's really reliable. It tracks well through a case. Even if you're only doing gases every hour, it handles things pretty well. It still wanders a little bit, but it's a great machine. Sorry. And it will tell you your DO2, and your oxygen consumption. It'll tell you everything you need to know. But in relations to DO2 and VO2, you can now see what really matters to anesthesia, and that is DO2. And it's right there in front of their faces. They can see it. And you can find out, and you'll learn flowing 2.6 will get you your DO2. And that's in the realm of the uncontrollable things, which is a hematocrit that's 7, that you wish was higher, but you can't give blood because the surgeon won't let you, or the anesthesiologist won't let you, or the hospital won't let you. Or within the realm of, you're already at 100% oxygen. Your PO2 is already 420. What more can you do to increase the DO2?
I know.
Increase flow. What's that?
Well, yes. Well, besides that, yes. To increase DO2, nothing except increase flow.
Right.
But to increase oxygenation at the tissue level, there's a lot of things you can
And then we're getting into that.
That's what I knew you were going there.
I think you're going to be, I imagine that you probably are thinking, okay, let's just go. I'll show you. So this is just a quick wrap up that you can tie your CDI into your Epic, and the information will go straight in there. Officially, CDI is not accepted as a what's a good word for this? It's not accepted as official. The only thing that's accepted as official is a point of care system or lab gas. Those are official, but you can use this as a training device. You can see where you're going, and it's very accurate.
Because we don't do validations on it.
Yeah.
No.
So you also, if you don't have Epic in your, if you don't have a CDI within your Epic, you can put a DO2 section, and you click on the DO2, and it'll pop up and say what's your you also give it the formula, but it'll ask for 3 things. It'll ask for the oxygen saturation, which on bypass is just always 1.0. For whatever reason in the formula it's 1.0, not 100% saturation, but it's 1.0. And then your FiO2 and your hemoglobin, your FiO2 and your blood flow.
You mean your hemoglobin and your
blood flow, hemoglobin, blood flow, FiO2,
PO2.
I can't remember now. I think it's PO2, but you get your DI2 popped up for you, and so it's something that you can satisfy your anesthesiologist with, so they can say they got their number and they're happy. So the major thing is we used index VO2s and we use index DO2s, and it just to quickly summarize, it's a VO2 divided by your BSA, or a DO2 divided by your BSA. So what it does is it puts apples to oranges. So both of these people, the little kid or the big guy, they're going to have the same number. So their VO2, the oxygen consumption will be, let's say, 220 for both of them, and their DO2, whatever we come up with, let's say we did good, we got up to 273. They're both going to have the same DO2 because the BSA cancels out the
DO2I.
DO2I.
They're going to have the same DO2I.
Right. And same VO2I. And that's just what that's about. So I put this in here because it's kind of important, because I'm big on oxygen consumption, because oxygen consumption is what the cell wants, and it's taking the oxygen, right? DO2 is just the max you can give, and it's hard can be to get to 270. And I don't think that anesthesiologists and surgeons appreciate that, how much work goes into, as a perfusionist, trying to get the DO2 to 270 and trying to overflow as much as you can without overflowing, and doing the best you can to get the DO2 there. And so, but here's the parameters. If you have a low to normal VO2 and a normal DO2, you're doing good. That's the best you can do, right? If you have a normal to high VO2, but you were able to get a normal DO2, that 270 number, take the money and run. Now, if you have a low to normal VO2 in the presence of a low DO2, that's not good. Low DO2 is never good. You got to really strive to get to that 270 to deliver the oxygen, and that's what's going to take care of the metabolism and the metabolic acidosis that always happens on bypass. We found a way. We found the solution. Well, a pretty darn close solution. I don't know how you feel about that, but that's, for years and years, I just gave up on it. I like, there's no way we're just going to have this acidosis metabolically, and there's nothing you can do about it. But I think that by maintaining the DO2 of 270, we can help that situation. So if you're going to treat a VO2, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 things you can do. And there may be one or two more. But remember, I've been working on this for years, and this is all I've come up with so far. I started off with just like 3, and then over the years, I was able to get more and more and more the more I learned. But so if you have an elevated VO2, these are things you do to treat it. Well, if you have a low DO2, surprise, surprise. You see a difference in the slides?
Just in the first line.
First line, yeah. It's the same thing. I'm hoping that maybe you know more. Maybe you have something to add to this. Maybe, I don't know. This is. Now we're getting into a real rabbit hole now, because we're going to start to go into the meat of our conversation, and that's acid base. And when you get into the acid bases, perfusionists are in a unique position of supreme control. And by that, what I mean is we can induce metabolic acidosis easy. We can't cure it so easy, but we can induce it easy. And we can also sort of fix it by bringing the DO2-Is up. It'll start fixing it. We can easily have respiratory acidosis by raising your CO2. And we can easily have respiratory alkalosis by lowering your CO2. We are essentially a god in the operating room. That nobody else can do that. Nobody can do that. Perfusionists, we kick ass. We have such a cool job. So
I mean, I think anesthesia can raise and lower the CO2.
Not as fast
easily.
as we can.
Well, no, nothing is. Well, it's pretty fast. You know.
You think so?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I think so. I think they can do that.
We
they don't have control over the.
We still have a cooler profession.
If we do, I would agree with you there. But that's
Yeah.
two separate things.
So what you're seeing here is that if metabolysis is controlled by bicarb, and you don't really want to be given bicarb all the time, but there are time appropriate things to do it. But because you can't give hydrogen. Did that work?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
There it goes. Okay. You can't give hydrogen. And you can't give H2CO3. I thought about water a lot. I was just kind of marking it out of the equation. You can give bicarb and you can give CO2. You can reduce CO2 and you can... Bicarb will go down because you go into metabolic acidosis. But or it'll stay the same because you're able to keep your flows up. So here's the question. If the CO2 goes... If you raise your CO2 on this side, what happens to your hydrogen on that side?
It decreases over time. Well, it goes up at first.
Goes up.
It depends on the pH.
Okay. What happens to the bicarb?
Well, it goes up as
Right,
well.
it goes
'cause
up.
It has to compensate for the decreased
Right.
pH.
It goes up. So if you lower your CO2, what happens to the bicarb?
Well, it'd be the opposite
It goes
effect.
down.
Yeah.
And the hydrogens go down.
Yes.
And this is a good time for me to say, when I see the word hydrogen ions, don't think of it as hydrogen ions. Replace that with the term acid. So if you have an increase in H's, just think increase in acid. And if you have a decrease in H's, you have decrease in acid. I just replaced the word H with acid. And so the major point is that of these variables, the one that we can really deal with is this one, CO2.
Mm-hmm.
So,
but the change, the bicarb and all of that takes time. Metabolic compensation of respiratory acidosis or alkalosis takes time.
Metabolic, yes.
But you can change the pH real fast.
Yes, with CO2.
Yes.
Manipulating your CO2.
Yes, rapidly.
Right.
I saw that today.
And when you have a CDI, it's phenomenal to watch. It's phenomenal to watch when you give bicarb and you sit there and watch your CO2 go up. Or when you're trying to treat high potassium, and you're using hemoconcentrate, you're using what's it called? not CVVH. Well, I guess it's CVVH.
Yeah, Z-buff.
Z-buff, exactly. Z-buff's a
Doing
fancier word.
Z-buff, yeah.
And
you're using saline.
And you're using saline.
You're diluting out your bicarb.
But you're also, the saline itself is extremely acidotic.
Yes.
And so you'll literally watch these numbers go up. And what's weird, you can, on this one actually sometimes goes down. It's kind of fun to watch.
Well, it goes down because of the dilution.
And the one thing you'll see is that the potassium on the CDI, you'll see it drop for a short term, and then it goes right back up. So I am not a big believer in Z-buffing. I don't think Z-buffing is worth doing, but that's just a side note. Yeah. Now, so you do it differently. You actually replace it with that
Bicarb-based solution.
And actually, I actually will load my normal saline with usually 100 cc's of bicarb per liter.
And that's fine, except that you're then going to end up hypernatremic. And you can end up very hypernatremic. So you have to be very careful with that.
And so I actually have a rule on that. And over a long case, and certainly I will never give more than, and this is actually a lot, but I've had to do it before. But still, you don't want to do this because you will end up hypernatremic, and that's not a good thing. It's a very bad thing. But the absolute most bicarbs I will give in one case is 6. So that would be what? 50, 50s, 100, 300 milliequivalents.
Yeah, but if you need it, you need it.
Yes, but what you'll find is that hypernatremia will sneak up on you.
Yeah, but
and then anesthesia's mad at you.
But then
that's where.
But if you're Z-buffing, you just get half normal.
You could do that, yes.
And then just dilute your sodium.
And the other thing that I do a lot is I let the anesthesiologist know, and I put it on them. Do you want me to do this?
I just get bicarb-based fluid, and that works.
Right.
Because I don't have that to worry about. It controls everything. Your sodium, potassium, your calcium, your magnesium, your glucose. It controls everything.
What's bicarb-based fluid?
Well, there's various different ones. It's used for CVVH or CRRT in the ICU.
So that's the thing. You got to go to ICU to get those bags.
You don't have to go there. You just call them and ask them. Bring it to you.
And those are also 4-liter bags, right?
5.
5-liter bags.
The only reason I don't use them behind the pump and to use them for everyday fluids is because it's a 5-liter bag and it's just too big. But they're not going to make them in 1-liter bags because it's not cost effective to do that. But, if I'm going to do CVVH, it's going to be more than just a liter anyway. And if you get let's say you have hyperkalemia, a lot of cardioplegia, your K is 7.7, 7.8, you want to get it down, I'm going to do probably 3 liters of CVVH with a zero potassium
fluid right there from that you get from your from your ICU,
you can use Plasmolite, but Plasmolite and Norosol are acetate pH balanced. They're balanced with acetate. They're not balanced. They don't have bicarb in them.
Right.
So you still have the same problem with your bicarb, but you won't end up with the hypernatremia, but you will end up with losing a lot of bicarb. You have to treat it. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
That's okay. So anyhow, that's kind of what I want to get across here is that if you're trying to increase your H's over here, you need to increase your CO2. And we are all taught this that it's 7.35 to 7.45 pH, and CO2 should be 35 to 45. So, but frequently, let's just stop there. Then we'll move to the next one. We're going to get the oxyhemoglobin dissociation curve. Now, when I first started doing this a long time ago, and I would look things up on the internet, nobody ever had the same numbers on the bottom as across their XY axis. Nobody ever had the same thing that they were looking at. And things have become a lot more standardized now, which I think is good because this is actually what it's supposed to look like. And the videos that I wanted to show you all about this, let's see, and that's the other thing. The standard stuff that everybody deals with is acidosis, temperature, and 2,3 DPG. And that's pretty much, if you've done an advanced oxyhemoglobin dissociation curve, that's what you find. And that's what people look at. And I'm going to take it to a whole nother level. And I'm not really going to get in the discussion of, I'm just going to say this, right is good and left is bad. We want to shift the curve this direction. And this is my list now, which things I've learned over the last very, very long time. When you want to shift the curve to the right, you want higher CO2s, higher bicarbs, you want warmer temperatures. I got CO2 twice, didn't I? Oh well. Decrease your pH, increase your H+. And I know that you want to talk about this with me, about the brain theory.
Mm-hmm.
But you can see it's on the right side. It's in the right place.
Mm-hmm.
And there's more. High potassium and low, and I don't say low potassium because low potassium is bad. That's going to affect your heart's ability to beat and your muscles' ability to contract. But normal potassium, I count that as good enough for a rightward shift. Normal glucose, it's good enough for a rightward shift. Both high glucose and low glucose. What's interesting about high glucose is that, and I wanted to ask you about this, high glucose can actually cause acidosis. Is that right?
I guess, yeah, I think so, but I'm not sure the mechanism.
Doesn't matter.
Somebody might know.
What matters
I
is that
buffer my sodium chloride when Z-buffing. Okay, yep, that's we all do. Yes.
Buffer it with what?
Bicarb probably.
Well, see, that's what you have to do is be specific.
But you can't get THAM anymore.
No, you can't get that, so it's got to be bicarb, right? So when I'm thinking about this high glucose, low glucose thing, I think having a high glucose, even though there are a lot of bigger issues with that after bypass, such as infection, if you have high glucose on bypass, that is associated with a high risk for infection post-op. Mm-hmm. So you really want to control your glucoses. But if you really think about it, if a high glucose causes acidosis, that could potentially be on this side. But I'm not going to say that officially because I don't want high glucose.
I think it messes up the microcirculatory system is what happens when you get a perfusion deficit.
Yeah.
That's what I think happens.
So if you have a low glucose, that's bad. But it shifts things to the left. So you want normal glucose. If you have a low 2,3 DPG, that pulls the curve to the left. You want normal. There's no such thing as high 2,3 DPG, right? I mean, I don't know if there's a normal 2,3 DPG.
Yeah, there's normal.
There's normal.
There's depleted.
Yeah. So there's really not a number that says that there's high, but there's normal, and so normal. But we don't measure this number, so I don't know if we should even count this in my curve, but it could be. So erythropoietin.
No, I think if you're giving a lot of, we don't measure it. That's true, but we know that it is depleted in older bank blood.
So we're getting there.
You have to give a lot of bank blood.
We're getting there.
Okay.
We're getting there. Because guess what's next? And I did this on purpose. Bank blood.
I see it.
Bank blood causes a left shift. And people always think that oxygen carrying capacity goes up because you give bank blood. And in actuality, most bank blood, when bank blood is 3 days old, like 70% of the 2,3 DPG is gone. So it only has like 30%. It's got a very low amount. And so what happens is it is a hemoglobin and it will bind, but there's nothing there to let it go. And so you're actually, by giving bank blood, you're actually shifting the curve to the left, and you're not helping the patient with oxygenation. You may be helping them with a what's called oncotic pressure agent. Mm-hmm. You're helping them with that, and the bank blood will in time switch over and start releasing the oxygen. But the initial parts of it, and it's probably like upwards of like an hour and a half, it's not going to let go of that oxygen. So your whole idea of increasing oxygen carrying capacity is defeated when you give bank blood. You can just expect that. And if you're doing a difficult case, or a very sick patient with lots of problems, you really want to get the most youngest blood that you can get, and have the blood bank. Let them know ahead of time. Look, we need the freshest blood that you have. This is an important case, and your job is vital here. You're an important person. You're a really important person. You can act like Trump. You got a lot. You got a very big responsibility. We know you know what the right thing to do is here. Please get us the most recent blood you can. So, erythropoietin. Now, what's interesting about erythropoietin, it will shift the curve to the right, but it takes weeks for it to start making red blood cells. But it still counts as a rightward shift. I'll give it that credit. Fetal hemoglobin grabs on to oxygen, doesn't let it go. Sepsis. This is an interesting thing because you go into acidosis, which should be a right shift, but there's something else about it that's bad, and it causes the curve to shift to the left. Now, I don't really understand it that well. I've tried to look it up just a little bit, but not enough. So I don't have the right information on it yet, but I do know that sepsis drives the curve left. And so, and if your patient, before you do your procedure, you should always be looking at your white blood cell count. Always. And I catch a surprisingly large amount of white blood cell counts with patients that are in the room, or they're going to come in the room, and I go to the doctor and say, hey, your white blood cell count is like 15 or 16 or 20. And at that point, the surgeon or the anesthesiologist has to make a call. Is the need for the surgery that important, or do we need to step back and give them enough antibiotics to get over there? But the important thing is look at your white blood cell count. That's one of the things you should look at whenever you're doing your pre-op stuff. And then the last thing. Well, I don't know if is this the last one? Yep, it is. It's the last one that I've come up with so far. I mean, you see, it took me 25 years to come up with this, and you won't see this anywhere. The majority of people that you're going to see that alkalosis, hypothermia, and that's all you're going to find. But in reality, these are all the things that are moving the curve. And I tried to draw a curve on there so you could kind of see left, right, but I wasn't able to do that. So I'm not that good with the computers and stuff. But anyhow, I think I got the point across here, and all the things to look at. So whenever I'm looking at a patient, and the matrix is flowing down the curtain of numbers and programs and stuff, I'm looking at all of these things, and I'm seeing all these things, and I'm thinking, let's see. I'm going to get to a point. Let's see if it's here. Almost. But I'm seeing all of these things at one time. Now, if you can, go to YouTube and look up factors shifting oxygen hemoglobin dissociation curve. And this video pops up, and it's actually a very good video. And I would encourage you to watch that video. It's really good. There's a lot of good videos, but this one actually said it did things just a slightest bit different. And I'm going to show you what they did. The reason that the videos are not that important is I'm going to draw it for you. I'm going to show you what he did. It's really cool. So the big things that you need to know, the fancy words for taking tests. I also kind of want to offer this to students who are looking at taking tests, right? Your fancy words are Haldane effect and Bohr effect. Cooperativity is one of your fancy words. What did I write? Cooperativity is your fancy word of the day for your Haldane effect. Let's see. Let me read what I wrote. I wrote this 20 years ago, 19 years ago? The Haldane effect describes oxygen joining up with the hemoglobin and releasing from the hemoglobin. Your fancy word of the day is cooperativity. The Bohr effect describes how CO2 jumps on the hemoglobin after the oxygen abandons it. There's no fancy words for that. Lower pH, lower body temperature, normal 2,3 dPg, higher K, and higher CO2 move the curve to the left, to the right. Higher pH, higher body temperature, low 2,3 dPg from, say, hemodilution or blank blood, lower potassium and lower CO2, fetal hemoglobin, and sepsis move the curve to the left. Shifting the curve to the right increases the amount of oxygen released at the cellular level, even in the presence of a lower SpO2 on your monitor. The leftward shift does the opposite. Leftward shift is bad, rightward shift is good. And one of the things that I want to read about that is that if you are shifting the curve to the right, and you look up on your monitor and their SpO2 is reading 94 or 93 or maybe even 90, because the curve has been shifted so far to the right, because you are actively doing stuff to drive the curve to the right, even at that 90 level, the cells are still getting 98% of the oxygen. So it's deceiving to just look at the SpO2 and say that on the monitor and say that we need to give blood, or we need to give more oxygen. All these other things can be done to drive the curve right and eventually bring that SpO2 back up and give it the oxygen, the cell the oxygen that it really needs. What do you think?
It's an interesting concept.
Am I taking you into my mind? My mind is a dangerous place, right?
Yes, I'm noticing that.
Okay.
It's interesting concepts. I think if I had an SpO2 of 90, I would want to know why. I would want to fix why, unless it's not fixable vis-a-vis we're doing lung protective strategies for ARDS, and 90, 88 is what we're going to get. In that case, then I understand what you're saying, which is let's optimize the ability for that 90 or 88% saturation to release to the tissue at the cellular level so that we don't have tissue hypoxia. And we'll deal with the hypoxemia, slight hypoxemia, but we won't have tissue hypoxia. I'm assuming that's what you're really saying.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
That's actually a very nice way of saying it. Yes, but yeah.
Okay.
It's out there, isn't it?
I'm still waiting for the cerebral oximetry.
Oh, it's coming. It's coming. So I wanted to try to draw this for you because this is really, really cool. Because one of the next things I'm going to do is see if I have it yet. Okay, yeah. So we'll go here. I want to try to draw this for you so that you can see it. Because the curve that as it's drawn implies that it implies a one-way trip, right? And in actuality, what's happening is a two-way trip. And so this is the fun part about what I'm seeing whenever I'm trying to employ bypass and trying to help lean all these factors the way that I want them to go. Your curve where it grabs onto the oxygen and then at the maximum level lets it go. The second part of that trip is back down. And so what you're having is a continuous grabbing oxygen, let it go, back down to nothing. And it's like this, right? Well, whatever cell you're at, let's say this one cell's got high potassium, and all of a sudden, the curve starts doing this. Do you see that?
Yes.
So it's not...
You shifted left
We're
at
shifting.
that one cell.
But it's going to be a broader-based amount, right? It's going to be a broader-based thing. So that portion of the body is going this direction. Another portion of the body, maybe they're not. And so what I'm trying to describe to you is that it's a round trip. And the implication that the curve, as it's drawn, it's a one-way trip. And that's where everybody misses it. It's actually coming back down and filling back up. And in normal situations, it's going to stay pretty much in the middle. But when we go on bypass and we start manipulating these curves and forcing them to go directions, the curve is now being driven, let's say we raise the CO2 and we start driving the curve this way. So the curve is constantly in a motion like this, where it's bringing the oxygen to the cells at a certain point, either a whole bunch of it or not so much of it. But it's always round tripping back to the lungs and getting more. Well, while that's happening, people draw the Bohr effect. So the Bohr effect, they draw it as a separate entity. It's not. And this is where it gets complex. I wish I had the ability to draw this with computers because I don't have that talent. But what's happening now is this. While this is happening with the Bohr effect. And what's happening here is CO2 is jumping on right into the lungs and jumping off. Jumps back on, drops off at the empty, comes up here, picks up the CO2, brings it back down. And it's overlaying. And the concept that they're two separate things and two separate events, they're not. And I think that's worth trying to explain because I couldn't, for me, I just was like, I got it. I could take a test. But in reality, that's what's happening. What do you think?
I think that's a good idea. I like it. I think it's true. I think that as you're releasing oxygen, you're picking CO2 up, and then you're adding oxygen, you're letting CO2 off. Yes, I do think they happen in unison.
And so
I would agree with
they're
that.
overlaid. But I will say this: the Bohr curve is definitely a straight line. It's a straight line, and versus no matter where you're at on the oxyhemoglobin dissociation curve, on the Haldane curve, no matter where you are there, the Bohr it's still a straight line. It grabs the CO2 and it lets it go, and it goes back up and it grabs the CO2 and lets go. But in the meantime, because it's the same molecule that's moving, and that same molecule is what's grabbing and letting go. It grabs oxygen down here, picks it up, drops it off, picks up the CO2, comes back down, drops it off, picks up the oxygen, comes back up, and so you're having this simultaneous event. And I just wanted, I'm hoping that other people out there think like I think, and they're like, wow, that actually makes sense now, because it's a complex thought, I think, to say that they're happening. It's one molecule that's doing this.
Right.
Anyhow.
Or at least a tetramer.
Right. So hands down, you have got to watch this video. Go in YouTube and type in human oxyhemoglobin, deoxyhemoglobin 3D animation. This is the coolest thing. It's the second coolest thing I've ever seen, and that's saying a lot. I've seen a lot of cool things. This is the second coolest thing I've ever seen. It's an actual animation of a hemoglobin molecule with sound. The sounds are really cool. They make this whoom, whoom, whoom sound. It's really cool. But it shows the 4 pieces of the hemoglobin come together. Oh, by the way, there's a couple of things, side notes just to think about for now. There's I think there's 2 million hemoglobin in one red cell. I think that's what they said. That's a lot. It's amazing how many hemoglobin is in one red cell. It's not like it's 100, it's not like it's 10. It's a lot of hemoglobin per red cell. So there's a lot of molecules binding all the time, and they're flying around. And the second thing is that the configuration of the molecule changes. And this video it's almost like they took an actual, which I've always wondered to see this. They took an actual hemoglobin under an electron microscope of some unbelievable ability, and they filmed it. And then this guy took it and he animated it. And he shows the hemoglobin kind of
in its tense and relaxed states.
But what he did is he drew in when the oxygen was going in, and and that's the other thing I was going to tell you. It takes 0.01 seconds for the binding of oxygen to happen. I just learned that today, and I thought that was so cool. 0.01 seconds. That's how fast oxygen binds. Anyhow. And that may be worth something to somebody if you're taking a test somewhere. I don't know. But so the hemoglobin is it's binding the oxygen, it's releasing the oxygen, and I can't remember. There's an important molecule besides the iron that's in there. There's an important molecule that comes in to release it, and it's in one of the videos. And then it releases it, and while it's formed like this, then it's ready to accept the CO2. So the CO2 jumps on, it closes, shoots back down, decouples, the CO2 releases, the oxygen jumps on, and it switches back. But when you see this video, it is outstanding. You do whatever it takes to watch this video.
Okay,
I'll put it in the.
I hate to tell you this, but we're already over.
Oh shit. Okay. So now we're to the oxy. So, oopsies. We gotta go faster. That's basically what I wanted to say about that. And now we're gonna talk about cerebral perfusion. The characteristics of a typical patient that we have. They're older, they're inactive, and they have multiple organ involvement. And this is important stuff about your brain. 15% of your total cardiac output is provided to your brain. 20% of your body's energy consumption is used by your brain. The brain is normally dependent for its high energy expenditure on aerobic metabolism, so it needs oxygen. And the brain is sensitive to failure of its oxygen supply, with the loss of consciousness occurring in 6 to 7 seconds, and the EEG, that means brain death, pretty much, going flat in 23 seconds.
Jeez. Thought you had 4 minutes.
Well, I guess there may be a difference between the EEG going flat and the actual death part. Let's look at it like that, because we are taught 4 minutes, 4 minutes. So these are the major determinants of cerebral perfusion. And I put CO2 first because that's the one we can really control. Blood pressure, we're not supposed to go above 70. You get in trouble if you go above 70. Blood flow, if you overflow your venous return, you get in trouble. Temperature, when you're rewarming, you can only rewarm so much. Your hemoglobin hematocrit, you're probably limited by what the surgeon and anesthesiologist will let you do. And even if they let you give blood, remember, it doesn't have an E2/3 DBG, so it's actually negatively influencing things. Glucose, because the brain needs glucose to work, but high glucose is bad and low glucose is bad. So you got to maintain, you can't really do much about glucose. And sedation, you can only sedate so much, but you can control the CO2. And this is just saying that in the presence of low CO2, the cerebral arteries constrict. In the presence of high CO2, the cerebral arteries relax. When you're on cardiopulmonary bypass, it's always about the brain, because the body can take a really, really big beating, but the brain can't. So you really want to take care of your brain. And it's about the CO2 that's going to dilate your brain and keep the oxygen going there. And then this is a question. Is a higher CO2 good for every cell in the body? I don't know. I think that at a cellular level, it's okay, especially for the short term that we're on bypass, because we're not on bypass forever. And certainly we know that each cell likes a higher CO2 because it's going to push their curve to the right. And it's one of the factors that's going to help you release the oxygen at the cellular level. So that's my answer to that. There's a few cerebral oximetry monitors. Now, these are from 2005, these monitors. There are newer ones available, but I just wanted to see what they potentially, they're smaller and they're lighter weight and the batteries last longer, just so you know. So there's the three of them. And this is the NIRS. This is the sensor that you put on your head. And it usually goes across your forehead, like around here. And it's sending a light into the brain, and what light comes back, it tells you that if it's blocked a lot, then I guess it says that there's higher oxygen there or something. I don't really understand all that, but that's the piece that's the sensor that goes on the head. So I did some research on different articles that have been written on oximetry, and here's the deal. This was written in 2002, but it's still pretty concurrent today. None of the monitors of cerebral oxygenation discussed has proven to be effective enough to become a standard of care. And that's the lowdown on this. Anesthesiologists are still not convinced that cerebral oximetry matters. And one of the problems with cerebral oximetry is it's going into Epic, if you plug it into Epic, and it's spying on you. And nobody likes to be spied on. So it's easier to just ignore it and not monitor it at all. That's kind of a mean way of saying it, but whatever. So this one here was interesting because they say that, well, the analysis, retrospective analysis, says that although there's no specific algorithms, when we use it, patients get better outcomes. However, we're not going to say, this is basically what this says, we're not going to say that it was because of the oximetry, and we're not going to say it's because the anesthesiologist even used it at all. But anyhow, just so you know, there is evidence that it's working. So that's where we stand now. So now I want to do is applying acid. This is where I get big. I'm trying to take a global approach with everything I've shown you, and I'm trying to say, applying acid-base oxyhemoglobin dissociation curve and NIRS to critical care. And I've already shown you all these things with the right shifts and the left shifts. And now I want to take it into real-world applications. So NIRS is giving you information, but the anesthesiology world doesn't want to acknowledge it, but they still use it. But it depends on, I don't know if they're really going to treat it or not. I know I do. If I see the oxygen going down on the right side or the left side, if it's trending down, you want to raise your CO2 up. And that is the one thing that will bring oxygen back to the brain. And it happens fast. But sometimes you have to bring your CO2 up really high, like 60 or 70. And then everybody's freaked out because, oh my God, you can't go that high. But once you see the curve turning on the brain, you're like, wow, that was a necessity. And so what's the word we're using? You're compensating.
Mm-hmm.
You're compensating. You're breaking all the rules in a bad way, and you're going to get in trouble for it. But the nurse is telling you to do it, and so doing it is not is the right thing to do. But now we come into the world of what are we doing? What patients really benefit from this kind of information? And besides just your average patient who really benefits, these are the sickest of the sick. And then there's ECMO. Oh, don't forget about renal insufficiency and failure, because renal insufficiency and failure are very important, because that's where CO2 is released from and out the urine, and that renal insufficiency by itself can cause a leftward shift. So when you're dealing with patients, think about that. That's another thing that you're working against. That's preventing oxygenation from happening at the cellular level. And then there's ECMO, and ECMO is probably the biggest one where you would prefer to have higher CO2s. And for the most part, I'm not saying 70s, 60s. I'm saying 48 to 52. I'm saying the standards need to be raised to 48 to 52 across the board for everybody when you go on bypass, because bypass is a complete and total radical change to the body, and we're trying to save the brain, and we're trying to give it a little bit of a bump, and just saying, and by that little bump, and then using the NIRS to confirm it, we can make decisions if we go back to 35 to 45. So final thoughts. Everything we know about normal does not apply to most of our patient population, and actually can be hurting them. Why do we keep doing it, and why are we legally liable if we deviate from norms, and what can we do about it? The person I talked today is to open your mind to some crazy ideas I have. This was from my talk a long time ago, so I actually changed this. It's not supposed to be there anymore. Don't read that. Tell you what I really think is happening. Don't read that. This was me being sarcastic, saying that doctors don't want you to do this. The anesthesiologist wants to have a normal pH. They want to see a pretty number, so they'd rather you blow the CO2 off so that they can get their 7.40.
And please forgive me for saying this, but I think some of this has to do with academia and what you're used to in the academic world. I think you might be seeing that change out of the academic world in the community hospitals. Most of the people, I think, that are either watching today or that I work with, and even my own experience, is a lot of times we have very collaborative relationships with these people. It's not like it is in the medical center where you have all these absolutely overblown egos and that kind of nonsense to deal with. But the fundamental question that I haven't had answered yet in your talk, which was great, is how does the oxyhemoglobin dissociation curve affect the NIRS? That was the title.
Well, I didn't I say that?
No, well, you might have. I'm not clear on it.
The oxyhemoglobin dissociation curve affects the NIRS because when you raise the CO2, which is, we're limited in what we can do with a lot of these things. We're limited. And so because we're limited, the biggest one that can make the biggest effect, the only thing we're left with doing, the only thing left.
So you're not saying that the shift of the oxyhemoglobin dissociation curve gives you a false reading in the NIRS. You're saying that knowing the oxyhemoglobin dissociation, I might have misunderstood the title, that using the oxyhemoglobin dissociation curve helps you to affect the NIRS in a positive way for increased oxygen saturation in the brain. That's what you're really saying. I thought that there was something that occurred with the shift that made the NIRS read inaccurately.
No, the NIRS is just a sensor, and it just reads what it reads, and it doesn't have a bias, and it doesn't get it wrong. It doesn't get it right. It just reads what it reads. And so when you're looking at the matrix and all this different information, and you're doing everything you can to push the curve over, once you've accomplished most of the things, you can't go any higher with those things, but you can go higher with the CO2, and that'll tip over the curve this direction, and you'll actually see the oxygen in the brain via the NIRS go up. Now, and then again, I pointed out that here's our problem. Anesthesia doesn't believe in it.
Yes.
They say that it's not good.
Well, there was an article written, patient or pumpkin. There was another article. I don't have it. I think we should use it. I wish I had it today. I was upset that I didn't have it today because I was having drainage issues, which I think was distortion of the SVC, and it was messing up with my return, and I was struggling, and the surgeon was struggling, and we were just having a difficult day. I wished I'd have had it because it would have given me a lot of information that would have been useful, but they didn't put it on for whatever reason. They normally do. But I think that, if you look at, you can always create a study to tell you anything you want, really, at the end of the day. But you can take if you take a live patient, you can have cerebral oximetry readings of, a range.
Right.
If you take a dead patient, you can have a cerebral oximetry reading of a certain range, which is compatible with life. And if you take a dead patient and remove their brain from their skull, you can get cerebral oximetry numbers using some of these devices that are compatible with life. So that's where the problem comes in. But if you put it on and you are measuring it and you're using it as a trending device, and probably it is getting a better technology, but I think that people just don't have confidence in it, and it can give you a false sense of security. You shouldn't just depend on it. It's like anything else that we use. You can't only depend on one thing. The total picture has to match what you're seeing. So I think it's a useful tool. It's really only a trending device, says Jeffrey Campbell.
Exactly.
I agree with you. Other effects of NIRS and cardiac output, venous drainage, SVC drainage, BP temp, absolutely. CO2 has most effect on NIRS, which is what you said earlier, Thomas, with right shift. I can't tell what that says. Oxyhemoglobin dissociation curve. I mean, all of that is absolutely correct, Jeff. I agree 100%. So I just think that, it's like any technology. We have a number, but, but you could be using a pulse ox, and the pulse ox is reading, 47. And everybody's up in arms, and oh my God, what's going on? But the patient's talking to you. Well, I mean, let's use some common sense, right? So I think that that's what you're really saying here is that, yes, there's a lot of people that don't want to use it, but it is a good tool.
It's a great tool.
It just is like every other tool.
Right.
You have to look at everything and scrutinize every result. Does this match the clinical picture I'm looking at?
So here's the interesting answer to your question on that one. You can't see this at a cellular level. You can't see what's happening at a cellular level. You can't see it. And we're using this curve that somebody made up. And I'm taking it to the nth degree and trying to apply all of the information that we can, as much information we get, and say that this curve is being driven one way or the other. But in actuality, I can't see it. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know. Now, I do know that as a training device for NIRS, before you go on bypass, when you first put it on, you get a number, and there's that number. And I do know that when you go on bypass, you will see that number go down.
Mm-hmm.
And I do know that after a couple of minutes, as things stabilize, and it's the hemodilution, I think, that's the real problem there. And maybe the drop in blood pressure, but for sure the hemodilution factor. Then the numbers will stabilize, and they'll actually come back up a little bit and stabilize. And these are reading something. They're seeing something.
Yes.
Now, during the bypass run, as you have changes in venous return or they hold back the heart, whatever, and you can see the numbers going down. Well, you can't do anything about your blood flow because you're overflowing already, or you are limited by your venous
You're
return.
going to empty the oxygen.
You're
You
limited
just
by
have
your
to
venous
give more
return.
volume
Exactly.
for it to go away. I mean, yes.
So now
you have to live with a lower DO2,
Exactly.
which
But-
Epic doesn't like because now that's going to be a ding against
guess
you
what?
and whatever.
But guess what? You can actually see this happen. It's brilliant. Raise the CO2, and you'll actually see.
Yes, you can make some improvement.
You'll see those numbers come up.
Absolutely. But I will tell you this, though. I don't agree that you can't see it at the cellular level because I think you can. And I'll tell you why I say that. Give me enough time and give me a patient on bypass, and I drive their PCO2 down to 14, and I leave it at 14, and I measure lactate levels are going to go up.
Right.
because you're going to have tissue hypoxia. You're not delivering the oxygen at the tissue level. So given enough time, I'll see it.
And the way you will see it is that when we draw our blood gas or we draw our sample of blood, it's drawn. It's a global thing. It's showing the entire body. So an average of what's happening throughout the whole body, and it takes time for that average to move one way or the other. And so, is it fair to say that moving the curve moving the curve one way or the other? Is it fair to say that we're moving this curve and it's happening instantly? Because it's not. And then also, it just goes down to you can't see what's happening at the cellular level. There was this guy who taught this course called the pressure field theory, and I found it this morning whenever I was writing this topic, and so I'm going to reread that because I think he's on to something that's similar to the hemoglobin dissociation curve, but I got to go back and reread it.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things he talked about in just the very first thing was that drawing the ABG or the lab sample, it is a global look. And so how do you get down to the cellular level and see what's going on at the cellular level? And what I'm doing is saying just an educated guess based on everything that I've ever learned. These are the things that are, and that they could potentially be moving the ability of the cell to get oxygen. And so we're trying to bring those things into a normal state or a state that's going to drive the curve to the right, where a patient with an SpO2 on the monitor that says 92 is actually getting as much oxygen as if it were saying 94, 95, maybe 96. What do you think?
Yes, I agree with you. I mean, I think that's true. I think if it was saying, I think it'd be more dramatic. You're getting adequate tissue oxygenation with an 88 PO saturation, a saturation of 88, as you would with a 99, if the conditions are such that the oxygen will be released to the tissue as needed. And your O2 extraction rate is no different, so you really should be in good shape. I do agree with you.
So
tomorrow I'm going to be doing in fact, I'm glad you brought this topic up, because tomorrow my lecture is, I can't read that. What's it titled? Yes, Adverse Effects of ECLS. And on Friday, I think it's Thursday, I have a short 20-minute talk, and that's on what does a perfusionist do. And that's a fun talk. It's 20 minutes, it's fun. And I think it's going to be go to this as well. I have a theory, and my theory is this. And I don't want to preview my talk, but basically every day I go to work, I know that I'm going to do harm. It doesn't matter where I'm going or what I'm going to be doing. If I'm doing anything with extracorporeal circulation, I know I'm going to be doing harm. And you said mean pressure can't go over 70. Well, that's hypotension in normal circumstances.
It is.
So there's a whole plenary of a cornucopia of bad things that we do to people, from hemodilution, which you said, low CO2s or deranged blood gases, cooling them, warming them, hypotension, hypoperfusion, loss of pulsatility acutely, all of these things. So it should be pretty interesting. But the adverse effects of ECLS, a little bit longer. I talk a little bit about glycocalyx and things like that, and how we derange people with a variety of things that we do. It should be fun. But Thursday's talk, that 20-minute one, is going to be fun. I
actually read that. I was thinking, what a great way, and who better to give that talk to complement and certainly expand on what I've said here. And also, I was looking at some of our former PerfWebs, and one thing I wanted to bring was PerfWeb 95. You know, we've done 98 PerfWeb series so far, and I encourage you to go back and look at our former PerfWebs, because in number 95 we talked about goal-directed perfusion and essentially
what
standards.
Are the goals?
What are the standards? What are we
the
looking
goals?
at?
Yeah.
And there's other ones we talked about.
I know what my goal is. Don't kill them. I did a case with Magic the other day, for anybody that cares to know. And the poor fellow, he was nervous as a cat on a hot tin roof. And I was like, magic. I mean, it's okay. We're going to be fine. The level was a little low. Things weren't going all that well. It was a challenging case. I mean, it just was challenging. But, you know, he had a clamp in his hand and he was ready. I knew he was ready to dive in there at any moment to save me. Today, we were giving cardioplegia, and he was like, your cardioplegia's run out. Your cardioplegia's run out. It's okay. It's all right. It's not going to go anywhere. It'll be fine.
I guarantee you, I really love the fact that we have perfusion assistants.
It's been great.
And
it's been great.
And
they're learning a lot.
They're super smart. And it's a big help when somebody says, hey, you forgot to do your blood gas. And I'm like, oh, dope. you know?
Exactly.
I don't know. That's
okay.
Good. Yeah.
All right. We'll see you tomorrow.
Oh, wait.
We ran a little over.
No, we did. Make sure to like and subscribe.
Oh, yes. Thank you.
That's very important.
Don't forget to like and subscribe, okay? Because if you don't do that, I'm going to be ruined.
And buy the app.
Yeah, please. I need to sell 999,999 more. Jeffrey, you're welcome, Jeffrey. Thank you too. Did you buy the app, Jeff? Do you have the MediWeb Perfusion and Clinical Care app? Good job, guys. Thank you, Kay Garcia. Jeff, do you have it? Do you guys, if everybody on the call has the app, you'll all win a prize.
Ooh.
Yeah, a special prize. The app.
Joe makes, yeah.
The app. All right, I'll see y'all tomorrow. Bye.
Everybody.
Bye.
See you next
Thank
time.
you, Kay Garcia. Kay Garcia has it.
Thank you for all the comments.
Now look at this. Jeff has it too. I've had the app for a couple of years now. Hey, we're doing some more updates, and updates are free. All right, peace out.